And we're good. Live.
Cool. Okay. Um, I guess I'm just trying to figure out how to because it's on the grid right now. So, um, okay. I guess let's go into this then. Hey all. This is a BCPC with I'm going America's Sweethearts Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders. Correct?
Nailed it.
Yes.
Great. Amazing. And we're here with the supervising editing team of Stefanie Mariduena and Brennan, Zachary Fuhrer, and Noah Debonis. Uh, would you guys be able to introduce yourselves and just like your experience working as editors and like how you guys came up?
Sure, I can go first. So I'm Stephanie. I started out editing. Funny enough, my background was not even in film at all. I went to school for ecology, and when I graduated, I was able to get a transcribing job at the First 48. My sister was an editor there, and she got me an interview just to see if I would get it, and until I figured out what I wanted to do. And I loved like learning film, like more about film, especially documentary, the more that I was on that job. So from there I built my way up to assistant editor position, and then eventually like junior editor, and worked my way up to an editor. So I worked on shows like Politics, on Showtime's The Circus, to we did this second season of Cheer with One Potato Productions, and then other stuff like Reality Check, America Inside America's Next Top Model, and more like pop culture focused documentaries. And in terms of working with this team, I first worked with One Potato Productions season 2 of Cheer. And then I also worked on Last Chance U Basketball, the second season. And then we just wrapped season 3 of Sweethearts. So that was like my fifth time working with this team, which has been great. Like I love coming back to them. They're like a work family for me. So it's really nice.
Hmm.
Like a lot of us have worked together for so many years now.
Cool. Next, and Brennan, do you want to go?
Sure. I started out well, with photography and poetry actually in college, but I always knew I wanted to be an editor, and I went up to the School of Visual Arts and sort of found my way towards documentary, which is where I always wanted to be. Love Maisels, Wiseman. I detoured through commercials and music videos for a bit before finally getting back to documentary. I've worked with One Potato with this team on a few projects. I think the other three you guys have worked on so many more than me. But I've worked on shows for HBO, a project called Murder on Middle Beach. I worked on a series called Years of Living Dangerously, which is about climate change, won the Emmy in 2014. So I've been around the block for a while.
Cool. Um, Zachary, do you want to talk about your experience now?
Yeah, sort of like everyone else on this team, I fell into documentaries sort of by accident. I was doing a research fellowship in Brazil. In college, I did playwriting. I was a history major, and rather than write a paper about public health policy, I decided to run around with a crappy DSLR camera and try to make a movie, and just caught the bug that way. And the first job I was able to get once I realized that I wanted to be a filmmaker was working on title sequences for a company called Prologue out in LA. The guy who did the titles for Seven, we worked on Iron Man, World War Z. I got to work on a lot of really neat, very graphic design forward editing projects, but definitely wanted to get into long form. Found a great mentor in the editor of The Place Beyond the Pines and Blue Valentine, an editor named Jim Helton, and he took me under his wing. I came up as an assistant under him, and he sort of showed me the ropes. And my sort of first long form editing gigs were at Vice, working on their weekly show, and I watched Cheer during COVID with my wife, and was like, it would be really neat to work on something like this that's so character focused, that's so verite forward, and just shot them a cold email after getting an award for some work on Vice, and managed to get on season 2. And I think I've worked on now 7 seasons of TV with them across 5 different shows, and it is just a spectacular group of people to work with, and every day just feels like super new, and we just love working with each other. That's about it. I feel very lucky to be able to work with this team of smiling, wonderful, smart people.
Awesome. No, and you're the last one.
Hey y'all. So yeah, I feel like probably like a lot of us in post, like high school video comm class, no one wanted to do the editing, and so I picked up the slack, and I feel like I've just been editing ever since. I've been kicking around in nonfiction for most of my career in some way, shape, or form. I did a lot of short form nonfiction, digital nonfiction stuff, branded content. Eventually ended up making my own feature documentary that I directed and edited, that had some success on the festival circuit. And through that, was able to get my foot in the door with this amazing team at One Potato. And I've been on, like the rest of our team, I've been working with these beautiful, beautiful people for 5 or 6 seasons of television now as well. And everyone is like coming home to family. It really is. This is a great team and great people to work with, and really beautiful filmmakers and storytellers. Like, I am in awe of everyone's talent that I get to work with every day, which is really cool. So yeah.
Cool. So I guess let's just jump right into questions. Considering you guys are all supervising editors on America's Sweethearts, what exactly does a supervising editor do, given that this is like a really broad, well, not a broad, but like a really large series? And how would you describe your role compared to like working on a smaller team that just has like editors involved?
I would say so. In this show, each season is 7 episodes long, and they're about an hour long per episode. So normally we start out with one editor per episode, and we also send out a lot of cuts to Netflix. Anywhere, it could be, depending on the episode, anywhere from like 5 to 8 cuts that goes out to Netflix. Towards the end is kind of when we the supervising editors start coming in handy, because towards those later cuts, they kind of get passed out to us, and we kind of ensure that everything is stylistically the same across the series. But also that's when we start working more directly with Greg Whiteley and Adam Leibowitz, who is our EP, and then also our story team, to address notes more directly and more quickly in the moment, as we're gearing towards lock. So that's like the main thing. I've been on other teams where like the supervising editors positions like different. So it kind of like depends on the show. I feel like it always like varies where you are. But that's like a bulk of what we do. And of course, like having towards the end, we have a lot of these like conversations with Greg, with Adam, with our story team, about just like really honing in on like, okay, what's the final story we're gonna tell? How do we like finalize and enhance the episode that we're on? And really just like making those final decisions about what we want to lock.
Cool. I guess that makes a lot of sense. Does anyone have any other feedback regarding the role of a supervising editor?
I'd say with this team in particular, supervising editors on this, we sort of get episodes, right? But some folks have had multiple episodes to see it through. Unlike other series where supervising editor more just sort of weighs in sort of generally, we're all very hands-on the finishing on this series with this team, which is great because we've all sort of like come together in style, and I think we could all sort of oversee each other's episodes. So we're all in sync.
Yeah, typically, if you're a supervising editor on the episode, it means you're the one delivering the final cut of that episode. And so, we also, we'll probably talk about this later, but we'll all like explode episodes in the second to last cut, and things will shift all the way around. But even with as many editors as we have on these projects and having multiple supervising editors, I think something that's super important to all of us is for everyone who works on the show to be able to watch it and feel a sense of pride and ownership over it, and to be able to see their work within it. So you never want to be like, oh, I'm going to come in and the whole thing's going to feel like one person's voice. We always want to make sure that it feels like the collective without ever feeling soupy, or like it doesn't have a clear point of view. And I think through working on so many shows together, and also just through the general respect we have for each other and each other's superpowers, we sort of figure out how to create a very specific voice for each season that we work on.
And we can chat, I mean, 100% to all of that. But I think also what's maybe interesting to know about this show, and possibly different from other shows that people work on, because every show is unique in the approach. But, you know, sometimes you'll be on a show and you'll be like, I'm episode 2. That is my baby and that is my world. But this show, the episode, we editors are jumping between I think all of us have touched every single episode in major ways. So throughout the 7 or 8 cuts of our episodes that we're working on, I might be on episode 1 for a month and then jump to episode 2 for 2 weeks and then jump to episode 5 for a week. So we're constantly jumping and shifting, which is really cool because I feel like we're all getting a chance to rework and retool and refine different things with new eyes. But then when you are actually delivering, as Zach was saying, with your supervising editor, when you come on at the end, it's then kind of making sure that everything is smoothing out the rough edges and working directly with our directors and story team to kind of tighten everything for final delivery.
Cool. That was really, really thorough. I guess I would like to jump to the chat because we have Sarah Garin. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. Would love to hear advice about breaking into the streamer space coming from indie documentaries. About how to break into the streamer space coming from indie documentaries. If anyone would be able to speak about that. Noah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was my route up, actually, was through making an independent feature projects, along with I was also working on a lot of like professional budget things, but those were more short form or commercial or branded within a slightly different world. And then kind of what got my foot into the door of series editing was making independent feature length documentaries. And I wish I could be like, this is the way you do it, because I'd love to just be like, this is it. But each person it's going to be different for every single person. For me, I would say like I feel like this is kind of lame because this is what everyone says, but like you make a network of connections throughout your career, right? That you meet people and you become friends with people and you work with trusted coworkers, and when they see the work you do, they'll be able to bring you in and help, bring you on to new projects. That's kind of how our industry works, right? So I had a pretty nice network of professionals in the industry who then, when they were seeing that I was doing independent projects that were maybe getting a little bit of buzz or making more long form documentary observational verite storytelling, they were then able to kind of pitch me or help me bridge that gap into series. So for me, it was through some really generous connections through contacts and post producers that I've worked with who helped vouch for me and connect me with filmmakers in the streaming series side. How does someone recreate that? I have no idea. But for me, it was, working on projects I was passionate about, making independent projects I was passionate about, making long form projects. And then that kind of naturally, through the connections I made in the professional world, those two worlds met. But I don't know if that's something everyone can recreate, but that's how I did it.
I want to add to because what Noah's saying about networking is so important, and this kind of goes hand in hand with this, that you want to be very vocal about where you want to be, not only like what you're aiming for, but also why. Like, I feel like something that really helped me out in my career was talking, especially like when I was coming up as an editor, like talking to editors and telling them like why I wanted to be an editor, what I was passionate about, letting them know that I was like a hard worker. And especially if I was working where I was working, building really good relationships with the editors that I was working with, just so that they knew like what I was looking for. And literally those are the people that then ended up recommending me for other shows that were aligned to like what they knew about me and what I wanted to pursue. So being vocal about that, it definitely goes a long way. And kind of like to help with Noah's point about networking, I think that that's huge as well. Just you want to go to as many events as you can. So like Doc NYC has a lot of events that you can go and meet some people. There's like happy hours happening coming up for Tribeca Film Festival, and there's going to be a lot of people there as well. So kind of just like you kind of have to really just go out of your comfort zone and seek out the type of people that you're whose positions you admire and like you want to be in eventually, and having conversations with them is super valuable.
Cool. Thank you so much for that. For that. For what you just said, Stephanie. I would to jump back to America's Sweethearts. I would like to talk more about like this question that I wrote is, given that there's a defined style on Greg Whiteley directed shows such as Cheer and Last Chance U, what do you think like Dallas America's Sweethearts is compared to Cheer and Last Chance U stylistically? And would you be able to talk about like how given the fact that many of you have been on the show since season 1, how did you develop that like the style compared to the other previous shows?
I think it's completely different stylistically. And I think because, I mean, the first thing is we shoot for, like about 100 days, and it's so much of what we get relies on the relationships that are developed in the field. We have, like, along with Greg in the field, we have Zoe Laurentis and Claire Underdonk, and on season 1 we had Chelsea Arnell, and like developing these relationships is so hugely important. I think that Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders has some stylistic things in common with Cheer, because those are our two shows, along with Wrestlers, a show that Noah M and I worked on that were shot on primes. And when you shoot on primes versus Last Chance U or the Clubhouse, there's more of a certain sort of cutty energy to that. And so when we are approaching, I think, Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders, there's a certain formality that I think we want to follow in terms of almost like narrative style storytelling, where when you make a move, you don't want to just be like embracing every camera shake. You want it to feel very intentional. A thing that I was thinking about a lot, at least editorially, is there was a show that existed before our show that was a reality show about making the team that existed for many, many years. And so in the back of my head, when I was learning about these characters, it was a lot of these people, especially the leadership folks, have been on TV for a long period of time. And so you're searching for the little bits of fat around the edges when sort of the mask comes down a bit, and embracing those moments and really trying to settle into the space and not cut it with a certain frenetic nature. I think we also embraced a lot of the inherent, like, not dark comedy, but sort of the humor in certain characters. Editing dance is also significantly different than editing basketball or editing wrestling. Probably has more in common with editing professional wrestling than editing professional cheerleading. The consistent thing across all of Greg's shows, though, I think is just they're all character focused. There's always a schedule that you could sort of latch onto that gives us a sense of structure. But we always want to go into these shows with completely fresh eyes and let the footage dictate what the style will be, so nothing feels as though we're reverse engineering it.
I think also with Sweethearts, one thing that we leaned on stylistically was the culture itself, right? These are very feminine women. And so you can see that kind of reflected with the music, that it's almost like this ethereal, bubbly, sweet. It's literally what you think of when you see these women. So for example, when we were doing like temp music, I know that I pulled from Flow, like the animated movie was one of them. Like I used like temp from Flow, temp from Won't You Be My Neighbor, the documentary, temp from Normal People had like some beautiful, like ethereal, like pensive tracks. So kind of also leaning into like what is this like environment that they're in, what is the culture like, and what are the people like give off, right? What do these characters give off? And that was something like we leaned onto with like the music. That I felt like was really like reflective of that culture.
Yeah, I feel
Honestly, that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, not at all. I think it's just, like Steph and Zach said, like you're working when you're figuring out the style of a show, right? We're getting to meet we're getting to meet these people. It's like when you get to know someone over a period of time. They're shooting for 100 days, and so we're in the editing room and the story room trying to figure out what is this show, what is the show about, what is the feel of this show, and then somewhere maybe 90 days in, you start to really feel like you're kind of connecting to these characters, to their stories, and seeing what their stories are telling you. And that's when you start to maybe be able to tune into a little bit more of a style. And I feel like something that was really important to me on season 1 that I noticed a lot, and throughout all the seasons, but I noticed a lot of our participants in the show are saying, being in DCC land, being in the Dallas Cowboy land, it's its own mystical, magical world. And when I heard that, I was like, oh wow, that is how they are feeling about their experience in this world. And I wanted to try to recreate that in a sense for the audience to feel that there's a little bit of a fantasy, for lack of a better term. There's like this fantastical element. And I think we explore that a lot in this series, with whether it be through the music, whether it be through kind of this trippy slow-mo entering and exiting spaces. And I feel like that's a style that we uncovered over, we didn't start there. That kind of like the truth of the story, the truth of the storytelling, it like spoke to us as editors and storytellers, and then we kind of were like, oh, okay, and tweak that.
I guess actually I wanted to, because we're talking about music, to just like get into what you guys working with, like with temp music, because that's actually a really, music is such like a core to this show, especially because this is a dance show as well. So if you guys would like to talk more about like the role of temp music and what you guys are working with, and also I was talking about it during the pre-interview, uh how many times you've heard Thunderstruck while cutting the show.
Music is hugely important. I mean, I think thankfully we all have similar tastes, and everyone is great about throwing in their own ideas, especially with needle drops. We're always tossing around various options. We've gotten some fun tracks in there. But I know that Greg and Adam are always pulling Spotify lists that sort of lay out sort of a vibe that we sort of try to follow. I don't know how it works on some of the earlier shows that y'all worked on, but on this one, I felt like it was really important that we followed sort of the set feel that they had laid out.
Yeah, for season 1 too, a lot. Going back to what Steph was saying and Noah was saying about the sort of dreamscape, there's this Walter Mercado Netflix doc that's really fantastic that had that sort of dreamy vibe. And like we wanted to establish this idea of what do you have to give up to be part of this team, and is it worth it? And you could sort of apply that to, what do I have to give up to get this job, and do I even want this job when I finally have it? So the dream meets the reality. But I think also, we obviously use a lot of score, but we're also very intentional about, we don't want to be emotionally manipulative ever with music. And one of the things I love about the show is there's also a lot without any score, or where, especially in the earlier seasons, where you could reflect the tension of a practice by feeling the vibe of the diegetic music of them going from beat to beat, or the intensity of a 3-hour game, and they're constantly dancing for 3 hours straight, these little like 15-second tags. So I think we try to be intentional about when you feel score. We cut a lot without music. A lot of us are drop out the music to make sure that a scene works too. And then when score hits you, it's like you want the audience to already say, I've already been feeling this emotion. But then there are also, we get to work with a sort of wide variety of editorial paintbrushes, and that there are pure verite scenes, there are the high impact sports montages, there are deep dives on individual characters, and you get to do these fun needle drop things too. And I mean, as an editor, that's super fun. I mean, I guess that's a stylistic consistency across the shows, is that you get to paint with all these different colors. And then another through line is that we're always trying to think of, we're shooting with cold eyes, we're editing with warm hearts. So we want to be empathetic always, and not point and laugh at a specific character. Like, we'll be failing if we don't have a three-dimensional shape to a character or subject.
I will use that in the future. Cold eyes and warm hearts.
Yeah,
I've never heard that being. I've never heard that.
that's Greg's.
described
It's like
before.
a Greg mantra. It's just, I mean, I think it's also just a through line for our team too. We're incredibly empathetic, and it makes going to work super fun. I think complaining can sometimes be contagious in an edit. And if you're all like critical of the work, but we all feel as though we're pulling on the same rope, and that creates a sort of energy where everyone feels comfortable pitching their ideas. Because what's the worst thing that could happen in an edit? It's like, whoops, it didn't work. Like, maybe that'll service a scene down the line, or it helped lead to a different discovery. But you want to go to work every day and be like, I have a good idea. It might suck, but I'm gonna try it, and everyone's gonna be supportive of that.
I think
Cool.
that's a great thing to sorry, Phil, a great thing to emphasize, that we get a lot of creative freedom as the editors on this team. So first, you never have to feel like there's this fear that you're going to do the wrong thing, and that can be very like hindering if you have ever been in edits that are like that. And we're always just like encouraged really to just do whatever we want in some ways. Like, we'll get selects for scenes, and we'll have conversations with Adam or Greg or our story team about what we're aiming for. But they're always like, if you find something else that you think is interesting that speaks to you, try it. Like, they're always open to letting us try different things. And a lot of times I think that we do end up finding gems that like people weren't like the story team wasn't thinking about, or wasn't obvious at the beginning. And I think that really helps to elevate like the final product. And like, also with us all being so comfortable with each other, we never have to, like, if something doesn't work out, we don't have to feel like, oh man, I like messed up. It just feels like, oh, they don't pan out. But and you just feel like it's a very healthy work environment that's been fostered in this space. And I think that that's really why like so many of us also keep returning, because we know that we have just like, we're able to experiment. Like, I know that I've definitely become a stronger editor because I'm able to try so many different things out here in a way that like I'm not always welcome to in other shows in the same way. And it's just super exciting to always just kind of like feel like you're not going to be shut down if you do something like that didn't work out, or and most often, like I said, you end up finding like gems and like things that really end up elevating the final product in a way that makes this like a very unique working environment.
Thank you so much for all those responses. I'd like to jump to one of the questions in the chat, somewhat related as well. What skills do you think are most important for a long form editor right now? What would you advise editors to focus on in order to stay valuable in the industry? And if you can speak to that.
It's a great question.
That's a really great question.
Yeah.
I'd say being open, sort of what we were just talking about, being open to what's in front of you and not trying to force things. I think if you're someone that can sort of follow the story, follow an emotional thread without like manipulating it too much, I think that gives you a much stronger base for working in long form. Particularly this kind of open long form where we're just following the stories that are in front of us. This isn't a show where the same thing happens every time. I mean, we do have from season to season, there are elements that sort of line up, but really the team is focused on different characters every time, Zach, like you said earlier. So for a series like this in particular, I really think it's about being open and willing to try and just following the emotional truth that's out there. I think that's where it works for me, and what I think I would hope other people could take into their next show or series or film.
And I think also finding opportunities for your audience, creating opportunities for your audience to connect with the characters. I think that's goes like a very long way. Like when your audience is emotionally connected to your characters, they're invested in the outcomes of the stories. And also that thinking in that way helps you as a storyteller to think about like, it forces you to think about how can I better understand these characters and understand their behaviors and what is driving them and their goals, which I think that adds like a level of humanness to it that makes people relate to what they're watching, and that's what keeps somebody like invested in wanting to finish what you put together, right? Wanting to finish the show or the movie. You want to be invested in your characters.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say it's like the earliest stuff that I was being hired to edit were these sort of short form branded thought poems that were a thing probably in the early 2000s, where it's an artist walking by a lake and saying like, when I think about music, I think about X. When you have a 7-episode series, you have to trust that you'll have opportunities to come back to these characters, and you'll plant a seed in episode 1 that you'll pay off in episode 4. So much of what you're thinking about is structure and understanding how an audience will follow an individual character's story and how they'll all pay off at the end. And I think as an editor, when you like figuring out sort of what Emma's saying, the most important thing is understanding how you're responding to the material and what your instincts are telling you, and trying to learn as much of the material as possible so that you'll also have that recall, and structure. And I think also we have a schedules are crazy tight on all shows now. And it's very easy, I think, to get lost in the sandbox of what if this, getting to a point where you cut something and see how it plays and get it to a point where people could give you really solid feedback rather quickly. I think that we shouldn't ever be afraid of that, because the faster you have something for people to react to that you yourself believe in, the faster you'll come to the next discovery that you need to make. Whereas it's super easy to just get lost and put things off and not necessarily procrastinate, but almost you have to make decisions as an editor. And so just do it and figure out your own organizational principles, so that you understand how you best organize material and how you'll best learn it and communicate everything to another person on your team.
Yep, that's organization is key, especially on like just key is like as an editor. I feel like it's like 50% of the job is just making sure that your like project is organized too. Especially on like a giant show like this. I mean, I keep saying it's giant because again, you guys have just mentioned that it's 100 days of footage, which sounds absolutely wild to me. So I'd like to jump to talking more about season 2 specifically, if only because I just finished watching season 2. Given that half of season 2 was more focused on tryouts and the second half focuses more on the drama within the team post tryouts, what did you find the hardest part of finding the story after like the initial start of the season, and to like keep the momentum throughout that season?
I think
If that
so. Sorry, go
makes
ahead.
sense. Sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, generally, I think, yes, it's inherent in telling the story of the, Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders that we're going to have to talk about tryouts. So yeah, that first half is pretty, I don't want to say obvious, but it's, we know that those are like the key beats that we're going to want to hit, like who's making the team, who's getting cut, seeing like which rookies we want to latch onto and follow through that process. After it honestly it's definitely a challenge because we're shooting at the same time that we're editing. So we start the edit around September, and that's right around, sorry, I'm not a football fan. So like what part of the season? I think it's right when the season starts.
Yes.
So this story is still developing as we're editing, and we honestly don't always know where it's gonna go. In the case of season 2, we did know from the get-go that it was gonna be the cheerleaders were gonna be pursuing higher pay because that was something that they had started talking to us about. So that was a storyline that we knew that we were gonna follow, and we were definitely building to that and know and like pulling sections, what are the different beats that we're gonna follow along for that. So like, one of them is like we called it like the money, money, money scene where like we see all the cheerleaders talking about all the different jobs that they have in order to make ends meet. And then down the line, we have the cheerleaders there's the group leaders having breakfast together and talking about how maybe this is their year that they can like push for more money. And then down the line after that, we have the sponsorship package where they just made the team and there's all these like sponsorship deals that they get and they're all like getting all these perks, right? But they're also like, okay, we're about to get our contracts. What is this going to look like? So when we already identified a storyline like that, we know that that's something that we want to make sure like we try to follow proactively. But then there's things that we don't know that are going to happen that end up happening. Like, for example, we didn't know that when they went to the Bahamas, that Shandi was going to get in trouble, right? That which is funny enough, that we have been following Shandi's storyline and trying to understand her. It was actually interesting. Like for a while we knew that she had these issues with like mental health and the whole past with her old relationships. And we weren't really quite sure where it was going to go. And then Bahamas happened and that kind of helped us see like, oh, wow, this is how these issues are manifesting in her life. So a lot of it is like honestly figuring it out on the go. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it into the cut that we just, it just didn't go anywhere. So that's kind of like part of the process, just, having some stuff like that we build and we start to like follow that maybe doesn't necessarily go different places, but then having other things that pan out as the season progresses. I mean, we didn't find out about the cheerleaders getting a pay until our last shoot, which was which was back in, I think it was last April or May when they have their banquet.
Yeah. It was at the end of the season. And so we were finishing up episode 7 and then found out that what they had pushed for. I think one thing that we could play with earlier in the episodes is there's sort of the veteran storyline, the folks who are the leadership on the team, who have been there for long enough to have opinions about what they like and dislike versus the rookies who just desperately want to be part of this group. And so you have these sort of two arcs to play against each other, the folks with rose-colored glasses, and then one of the main subjects of the second season is Jada, who's a bit more outspoken and is like, maybe things aren't, you established pretty early in the season that she's maybe not satisfied with the status quo. And she becomes a way in, along with other members of the leadership team, to articulate this fight. And I think, sort of speaking to how the seasons change as well, season 1 came out on Netflix after auditions in season 2. And so there was this live reaction to the show of, oh, there's this conversation happening online. There are these articles being written about how we're perhaps not being paid enough for the work that we're doing. Should we be advocating for ourselves more? Is this a fight that we could get support for? And so we're tracking all this stuff in real time and reacting to it. And naturally there are the stakes then that go beyond the audition. But yeah, so we have to be reactive because of the nature of the shoot. It's not like you read a book about the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders and you're like, okay, episode 5 is going to be this story. And we love to embrace all these stories. Every human story is super twisty. And if you try to simplify a specific character because maybe it makes more narrative sense, then that's denying the truth of who that person is and what their story is. So it makes it sometimes a little bit harder editorially, but I think ultimately makes it a lot richer.
And also just figuring out, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was just
go
gonna say
ahead.
really quickly, because so much of it is like a character driven show, we have to figure out, the things that we know about our characters. We have to be very calculated about when we're going to give this information to our audience, and figuring out, like, it's like a onion layers, right? When are we going to peel back on it and we do a lot of playing around in the edit with when are the best times to divulge information to our audience about a character, and finding the right time to, like, when is that going to be more impactful?
I mean, what? Oh, sorry.
Oh
Go
no,
ahead,
all
Noah.
good. I just super briefly on that topic is, like, I think to peel a little bit of the layer behind the editing and storytelling of building in this second part of the season where the storylines kind of escape from the who's making the team. Like, we've cut so many storylines, like there's so many things that have been not just rough cut, but really fleshed out, integrated into the edits. We got like 10 or 11 episodes of material, and it's cut, and we've cut it. And so that's kind of like part of the beauty of, like, making an honest to God documentary here, where we're figuring it out on the fly as it's happening in real time. Is like, we have to play, we have to experiment, we have to see where it all kind of goes, because we don't know. We don't know. We're almost like the audience ourselves, where we're seeing it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to jump back to the live chat. Given that you're covering events in real time, how do you handle unexpected curveballs and stories that you're trying to craft? Like what you guys were just discussing, what happened with Shandi in the Bahamas, or just like the live reaction, or I guess also the live reaction and how that like grew into a storyline in and of itself in season 2. How Reese, correct, becomes an influencer,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess, yeah, how do you balance that within your like edit throughout the time that you're on the show?
You cut fast, I guess. It's like you just have to move fast. And I mean, we could all probably speak to the second to last version of every single edit we deliver looks nothing. I feel like we always get to a point where things are moving along, folks are really responding well, and then the second to last edit, we just say, if we could throw caution to the wind and just, this is our last opportunity to really blow this up and explore every potential right turn, left turn that we could take. Let's do it. And sometimes that'll yield an edit that we feel as though we take 10 steps back in order to take 20 steps forward ultimately. But yeah, I think we're responding to what is happening in real time and not trying to manipulate the footage to serve a story that we think should be the case. We want to be surprised by the material, and I think that's especially true with the sort of observational cinema, but also should be true for interview and archival focused documentaries. I think documentaries are always richer when you're not going in and being like, I've read all the books about Bruce Springsteen. Hey, Bruce, tell me the story that I read in your book, and I'll now make a documentary that's that particular thing. You want to be surprised. That's ultimately what makes the richer film.
And you want to stay honest to your material. So honest to the material, honest to your participants' experiences. So for example, what happened with Shandy unfolded, we knew, okay, like this is what happened. And you, in a way, when something like a curveball like that is thrown at your way, then you assess whether like it's something you want to include in the show, 1, and 2, you in a way then do a bit of like reverse engineering if you do decide to include it in the show, and think, okay, what are the best ways to land here? But we're not using Shandy's what happened in Bahamas just because it happened. We had already built, like I said, we were already working on her storyline and like trying to understand her and her background and who she was. Just generally at the beginning, we always just kind of hone in on the characters that kind of like speak out to us most, and we feel like are interested in some way. And we, in a way, it just happens. Like, I think with all characters, something ends up happening at some point that then we're able to follow, or like it gives us like a missing puzzle piece for us, a storyline that we were already building.
And shout out, as Steph was saying, shout out to Greg and the storytelling team in the field, where when these things do happen, where it's spur of the moment or something changes in the storyline we're building, it's not. I don't think we very frequently have to shoehorn anything in, because there's already
Yeah.
been so much rich coverage. Like we said, there's 100 days in the field or more or less. So it's like there's so much rich coverage of our characters' lives that what we need to pivot on that story is pretty much usually already there, because of the great job that and the relationships and the trust that the field team has built with the characters. So it's like, yeah, a lot of the building of the story is in post, but it wouldn't be impossible without that foundation laid in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Speaking of coverage, I mainly work in scripted right now, but I would like to say what I've learned like in my career is the most successful films that I've worked on usually have a lot of coverage, to be frank, because there's just so much to work with in post. So it's nice to know, especially like working on like American Sweethearts, that there's a lot to work with, and also just wrapping your head around is wild to me. So I guess going more technically, how would you approach given that there's so much like so many dance sequences, how do you go about approaching like the edit of a dance scene, considering there's like a lot of solo dances and there's a lot of dances as well, once a team is formed and they go out to the field. And if you could talk about just your approach to cut, like once you get the footage, how do you approach cutting that scene or those types of scenes?
I've usually approached those sort of based on what the underlying purpose, the subtext is to that scene. It's not always just, here's this performance. There's usually something beneath it that we're trying to pull out emotionally, or thematically. So that's usually what I focus on. It's not actually always these specific performance. I don't know. That might just be me.
It's similar across, I think, all of our shows where this is going to sound trite, but I sort of view the big performance or big games as being like a Broadway musical, and that the performance or the game has to reveal something about a particular character and be some sort of inflection point. I mean, always the dance has to be great. We have to communicate that this is not, that this is challenging, that this is artistic, that this is athletic. And certain sequences do just that, whether it's the kick sequence in season 2, that Steph cut, or the Thunderstruck sequence in season 1, where you want to give the audience the ability to understand the nature of the style of dance, what makes it particularly complicated, so that they could be opinionated about it. But then it might be, oh, this dance sequence is following one specific character's point of view as they're trying to work through a very challenging thing. Or we're trying to create frenetic energy through showing the diegetic, cutting through a 3-hour game where they're doing 15-second dance sequences and constantly on their feet and feeling the energy of that. And dance is serving that purpose. In terms of cutting the solos and finals, even though so many of those ultimately become one group's rookie performances or veteran performances, ultimately you have to start in that context as cutting each solo individually and trying to cut the best, as if cutting a concert film, the best version of that singular performance. It was the same with Thunderstruck in season 1, because ultimately, if you know I have a great dance sequence that cuts perfectly, then you could build around that. Whereas if you don't do that as a step, then you're going to be making something that might just feel as though, oh, I'm cutting to slow-mo or I'm cutting to B-roll, and it feels a little bit less intentional. But to what Em was saying, it has to have a purpose. It can't just be like, okay, now we're dancing. It
Yeah.
isn't that great. Or now there's a basketball game and they win. And like, that's the only, there has to be that subtext.
I also
Oh, go
think
ahead.
that, oh no, sorry. I also think that, and this is my take on this has been evolving too over editing from season 1, 2, and 3, is that I'm learning myself. I'm seeing these dances so much, and I'm learning myself about these dances, that the way I've cut them is also kind of begin to change and evolve. And so like, I'm really now 100% yes to what everyone said. Like, the dances serve the story, right? So everything is rooted in the story of our characters 1,000%. But now I'm also trying to think, and this is something that I was working on. Actually, shout out to Loretta in Story Team. We were working on this recently in this last season. Is like, I really want the audience to understand when they say hairography. Like, we have these terms that we throw out about, specific things that our performers do in the dance. Like, one of them was hairography, for instance, and it's the way that they're using their hair to highlight beats or moments. And this is the first time where I'm like, we really want to focus on that and explain that. So when an audience is watching this, they're not just seeing beautiful dancing. Of course, they're seeing that, but they're really seeing the individual elements that go into this dance, because there's so much that go into this specific style of dance. So it's also kind of like focusing in on that and trying to really make sure that that is told through the story, and it's not just kind of pretty pictures,
Mhm.
To mention, another question we have from the chat is, could you talk about the relationship you have with assistant editors and how vital an assistant editor is on the show of this scale? And I guess also, in a broader question, what is hierarchically, what does this show look like with like supervisor editors, and down the line?
So we have the story team to start, and that's what's great about our story team, is that a lot of the people in there, like Claire, Zoe, that I mentioned before, Kate, they are also in the field. They're also like the field producers or co-directors. So that's super helpful, because they are able to be a great resource for the edit. Once, if we're looking for something specific, we have a Slack channel that's called Story, and we can just like ask there, and anybody's able to like answer, and like it becomes like a very efficient process to finding things that we need, or bites, things like that. So in the story team, we have them. And then in terms of the edit, it's the editors really. There's 10 for season 2. There were 10 of us, and we rely a lot actually on the story team. If we have requests for string out, or like helping us find B-roll, if we're looking for a specific shot, since they know it so well because they go through all the footage and a lot of times they mark it up for us, they're our main resource for that. In terms of the assistant editor relationship, I found this like has become more common in TV, especially in series, where they become more of like a tech-driven role. So they do a lot of like the taking, grouping all of our footage, organizing it, labeling our audio tracks, all of that text, more organizational workflow. And then from there, handling exports, all of that. But in terms of story, I wish that, they have so much to do with their, prepping the footage, that they kind of like hone in on that. And then we have the story team to help us with story tasks.
I think a show of this scale, you really have to know all the footage, and editors know what to look for. We know what we're trying to do. And it's unfortunate. I think assistants don't get as much time to work on edits. I think as it would be so great. I mean, some do plenty, but I think there's less room to move on a show like this, because you really need to know the footage. And it works, and we're going so fast. There's not a lot of time to say, here, assistant. So again, sometimes we can do that, but it's not as much as I think we'd all probably like, to let people try and experiment and then toss it back, and then move forward. It's unfortunate, but it's just the scale and the time frames, the schedules.
Yeah. And again, since we're always getting new footage and stuff, the assistants are constantly going through it and grouping and,
And
organizing.
That takes forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of the hierarchy,
huge
though, it's
job.
like it's a pretty flat hierarchy overall, though,
Yeah.
in the sense that so story producers in a way almost serve as a story. They take on some of the roles what an assistant editor might be on another show in terms of preparing string outs, or if you're saying I need a bunch of B-roll from this specific thing, or we're building a beat about this specific character, and we have to hit this edit by in 2 days. What kind of material do we have that could service this? And they might have the knowledge of this particular character or this particular storyline. So we lean on the story team a lot for that. But in terms of the hierarchy, it's very, very flat, sort of as what I was saying earlier, in that we all pitch each other. We all feel enabled to, throw a new ingredient into the gumbo. And I think that's super important because we've had story producers become editors on our team in season 3 and past shows too.
And assistant editors become editors.
Yeah, assistant editors too. Kara Ferrari became assistant editor, became an editor, and has been doing great work also outside of the One Potato family too. There's almost like I'm able to experiment with my potential pitch, but I'm also going to do your pitch. It's a very yes and environment, but we still have this idea where once we get to locking, like Greg and Adam and the supervising producers, like we do all respect feedback. There's not a lot of like infighting. We call Adam the lock king because he just really gives really fine, actionable notes, and we know that they'll get us across the finish line. And Greg's that way too. We all just have a phenomenal amount of respect for each other, but also we know that there has to be like a director and a showrunner point of view, so that we don't get too lost in the weeds at the end.
Cool. I guess another question from Chad is, what percentage of footage do the editors watch? Given that there is like a lot of footage.
It's hard for me to know because I wish I could give like a number. We all watch a lot. I'll just say we watch a lot. Like by the end of we might be editing. I don't know, how long are we on the show? Maybe
like 9 months.
Yeah,
I would say, like from beginning to end.
A long run. So like by the time you wrap, like you'll have seen a really large amount of the footage. But I definitely I'm not embarrassed to say that I have not. You can't watch it all because in a day you might have 8 cameras in a group, and each camera might be telling their own unique story. I mean, it's not just the amount of days; it's the amount of individual moments that we're covering throughout a 8 to 10 hour day of shooting. So there's just so much to see. So I try to watch as much as I can, and I try to really I feel like that's incredibly important when you're editing like long form observational documentary. You really have to because you find so much gems in the in between moments and the pauses and the breaths and the looks, and that's where a lot of our great stuff comes from. But I mean, I rely so much too on the story team who have seen so much of this footage. They might have been on before I have. They might have been in the field. They've seen so much of this footage. They've marked so much of this footage. I rely so much on the note taking that they do. Our story team is incredible. They're editing, they're writing, they're a lot of times giving direction, helping produce. They're doing so much. And so I give them a ton of credit for helping us understand this millions of hours of thousands of hours of footage that we have. But there's no shortcut. You have to watch a lot of footage.
Yeah, like Noah saying, we are very limited in time. We have the deadlines and obviously just a limited amount of time for the full edit. One thing that I think helps us is just, when we do have a scene, that's when we try to hone in, okay, how can I dig as deep as I can on this specific scene? So we'll get selects, but then we also go to the raw and watch as much of it as we can. The great thing is like with Premiere, you can, do like the double and it doesn't change the pitch of the voices, the double
Right.
speed. So you can
Yeah.
still like understand what they're saying. We also have, transcripts that helps us like scan for words, or even like we can search for them if we're looking for something specific. And like I said before, the story team also has these like really useful markers system that they've implemented that also helps us if we're like in a cinch, right? If we're in a cinch, we can just look through the markers really quickly and scan through there. So we have these systems that help us get on, that helps us get an overview of what we're looking at. But yeah, definitely when we can, we truly try to like watch down the raw of like the specific scenes, but it really is impossible with the amount of footage that we have, the amount of editors that we have, like that we all have to be doing different things and just a limited time. We would all love to be watching more, but we have a great team of storytellers, and it's nice because then they'll give us selects and things like that, but then we are also able to contribute our own like story ideas and how we want to write it as well, so it becomes a really nice like collaborative product at the end.
Yeah, season one I nearly like perished just in terms of, because there are no shortcuts to learning footage, and so frequently also you get to the end of the edit, and especially when you're trying to save a lot of things and not kill darlings, it's like you go back, something has become super tangled, is trying to accomplish too much in one beat, and you go back to the raw and you figure out, okay, well, what was I actually responding to, and what is the footage telling me in the first place? So we really all are like, we're really digging deep and collectively have learned all of this material, and there is a lot of overlap between editors, but something that's hugely important for a 7-episode series with so many editors is it, as Noah was saying, it's impossible for all of us to learn all the footage independently, but so much of our strength comes in our ability to trust each other, and to like, you can't be an egomaniac on a job that is this collaborative. You have to trust that we all are sort of working toward things collectively, and if there is a scene that is really freaking working, what is the value of going back and saying, oh, all right, this is existing, but I'm the supervising editor on this episode, I want to watch all of, like, that's helping no one, and nothing, I mean, I think gives us greater joy than when you go to a scene and you're like, holy shit, Steph really knocked it out of the park here, Ed knocked it out of the park, Deja knocked it out of the park, and you just start gritting and you're like, I'm not going to touch this at all.
Yeah.
A killer freaking moment, and so I think that it's like, as a collective, we're the Megazord from Power Rangers, and we've all learned this material. We are one brain. We are one.
We should get matching tattoos that say that.
Yeah, we are one.
Could you talk from the chat again? Can you speak to about what you feel about your ethical obligations are with representing characters authentically? Especially given that you are working with like real people. It's funny, I was watching this in the past few days with my partner, and I'm like, yeah, these characters, and my partner's like, these aren't characters, these are like people.
Yeah.
So I guess like just speak more about like representing these people authentically.
I take it really seriously on all shows. I mean, you can't tell somebody's story right if you have an agenda. You have to have empathy for that person and to know how to tell their story properly. And so people, I'm honest, I'm amazed that people still allow themselves to be filmed for documentaries. I mean, I'm not sure I would do it. And so the fact that people turn themselves over to you, they trust you to tell their story right. I've been on projects where I've had to make people look bad. I've had to tell stuff that wasn't true. And I love that this team is not like that. Like, this is a thing I'm all worked up about right now. But that is really important to me. And I think everyone on the team really wants to be truthful and honest and empathetic. And I that's what I love about this team.
I think to just as editors, the editing job, and I think this applies to a narrative, is a very empathetic position. where you're really like putting yourselves in the shoes of your characters or your participants. And in the case of documentary, you really just have to, these people are being very vulnerable with you, and you have to really just respect that. And I think that's where it comes in. Like, all of us are very empathetic, very caring people, and everybody in our team is very caring. Like, we all, at the end of the day, have the best interests of our cheerleaders at heart. So I think it's also something that's like it's been fostered in our team. It's not even something that we necessarily like think about, because it's just innate to what we're doing. And yes, there's things, like I was saying before, where we're following a character storyline, and we have to figure out like when are the ways like we're gonna divulge our information, but it's always staying true to the essence of their experience and what they went through, and making sure that like that is always honest and true and respectful of them. So that's it. Like, that's just what it is. Like, I agree with like there's no reason to tweak that otherwise. Especially when you're following like a story in real time, like this, in some ways you also can't do that. We're not gonna say that somebody didn't make the team and that made the team or something like that too.
Yeah.
I think it's for me, for all of us, I know for a fact, and I echo what everyone's just said, but it is the single most important thing to me when I'm telling any story that I work on. And like Em was saying, I'm so lucky to be working with this work family, because everyone feels the same way. It's really important that we tell the closest, honest story that we can. At the end of the day, we're telling a story, right? So a story is going to have a point of view, and it's going to have a narrative that you have to kind of unfold, and that's our job as editors and storytellers. But we strive so much to be honest and fair and show every side of every story that we're covering, so that way the audience can I think, as Zach mentioned this earlier, like when we were talking about music, like, we don't want to tell people how to feel. We want people to see this slice of this moment of life, and take away from it what they've recognized from their own lives and their own experiences in the world. So like, it's not my job to point you in a direction as an audience. It's my job to present this and make you hopefully feel a truth that might be unique to you or unique to every single person that watches this story. So I could wax poetic about this, but yeah, it's very, 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 very important. Very important.
So I guess if only because we're getting towards the end of our conversation, could we let's talk about like the tone of seasons 1 and 2 compared to the tone of upcoming season 3, which correct me if I'm wrong, this is coming out June 12th on Netflix.
June 16.
June
16.
16.
Yeah.
And I guess just your experience like on this team, finding the tone as opposed to the past 2 seasons.
I mean, we can't
and
talk
also
a lot
your
about,
editing experience as well.
We can't talk a lot about the content in the season, but I think one thing that's consistent is that we're always going in with a completely fresh look. Even with things that happen in the audition process that are consistent season to season, you're not telling the exact same, you're not showing the makeovers the exact same way or auditions the exact same way. It's a different character, it's a different subject leading you through that experience, or there might be a different way in which the audience can look at that particular action. But we also understand that this is a living, breathing show and a living, breathing team. And so we have to understand, we have to be honest with that. It goes, the consistent things across all of our shows are cold eyes, warm heart. You want to understand the subjects, what they want, so that you could follow them across, follow their arc through the season. You want to follow subjects who are working through something over the course of the season. It's not like something happened to me in the past and now I'm going to tell that somehow through the story. It's like, no, you need to latch on to what that person wants. And it's a present tense documentary series. So there's that. But like there's so much different season to season. I love looking at especially as younger editors on our team develop more confidence. It's their second show, or they're just, you start to notice the superpowers of individual editors and supervising editors, and it's awesome. Like I get to know what a Noah-ism is, or what
We
certain
have our
things
signature.
yeah, our signatures, but like it's awesome to be just going into work every day and feeling like you're learning something from the other people that you're working with. Uh, and so
It,
that, I mean, yeah.
I was just gonna say, in terms of style too, that I think does apply in the show, from like the different seasons or the tone, is that there's a context, right? So by season 3, there had been 2 seasons already out, and that with a lot of prior context to like what's now happening in season 3. Season 1, for example, was a lot of like laying the groundwork of what the culture even is in at the DCC, and like discovering this whole new DCC world that it's in some ways very foreign for a lot of us, and kind of digging into that the aspect of things. And then season 2, we're exploring, then we already know more of like the background. We don't have to do that anymore in season 2 as much. And instead we're exploring, okay, what are the repercussions of being on a team like this? So we kind of build off of that also, like what's been provided prior in the prior seasons that helps us to then kind of propel. And how does that become relevant to in like the season 3, right?
Yeah, that completely makes sense. I guess what are your thoughts on just like the overall just the overall your experiences and your favorite scenes that you cut on the series? And if you would like to just talk about like even your favorite memories working on this as well.
Wow.
I know
Um,
we're going to like a
whoa.
very straightforward, simple question, but I figured it's a good way to wrap this up.
I did a lot of work on the pilot episode, and I know we're really kind of more focused on season 2, but that's where most of my memories are. And we were talking about experimenting, and I remember for the cold open scene, I think I did 8 or 10 versions of different cold opens, and everyone was like, "Yay, these are great in various ways," but they weren't right until we found the one that was right, which focused on Victoria, sort of set up the theme of the show. But that's one of my favorite memories, and putting together sort of the beginning of the show is super fun. And anyway, I'm gonna end there because I could go too far. So you guys tell your stories.
uh, Also for me, honestly, the whole, especially season 2, to me was so special in so many different ways, because following the storyline, obviously, of like the women advocating for themselves, I thought was very just like so inspiring. Especially the leadership in that year, like Megan, Jada, Armani, and everyone else that was like leading this effort for pay. I thought that was just really inspiring. I think like a lot of women relate to that. I certainly do, especially as a woman of color. So that was a really special to be working on something like that. And what was really amazing, I remember, was when we were wrapping up the show, and like, we had this whole season done. And I remember finding out, like, I don't remember if it was like footage, or I like had a conversation with Story like at towards the end, that they got the raise. And I just remember like getting goosebumps. And we've been with these women in such an intimate, over like
Mhm.
so many months, and like really over a year. So you feel like this, you really just feel this connection with them. And you're also invested as an editor and like their outcomes, especially because they're real people. So seeing like that they were able to, like, their efforts were rewarded, and that they were able to get what, fair pay, or something that's more fair, was really so gratifying, I think, for all of us. So that was honestly, I think, like my favorite thing about season 2. Just felt very like connected to that.
Thank you so much. Zach and Noah.
Season
I
one,
oh, go for it,
yeah.
Zach.
Yeah, I would say season 1, I mean, I have a lot of memories of just being up at like 3, 4 a.m. and like like the sort of edit magic hour of finding like
Right.
that perfect connective tissue. And when the structure really starts to take form and all the connective tissue is working. I mean, on a long form series, I feel like everyone could cut, you could cut a really strong scene, but it doesn't really matter if it doesn't service like the whole. But there's this amazing feeling when you're like, oh, everything is really cooking now. And like there's a flow, the sharp edges are where they're supposed to be. Like it starts to feel like it's you watch it back and I think Noah spoke about this at some point, like you're just watching it back like a viewer. I would do for season 1 every Friday when I would deliver to Netflix. I don't know if I was allowed to do this. I would just watch the show with my wife. I would force her to watch it and then just vibe off of like the energy of her room or when my dog got up to leave, and take sort of notes that way of what was working or what still needed work, because that's the one challenge with a remote workflow of not having that feeling in the room. With season 2, a scene that I think about a lot and getting to paint with a little bit of a different brush is the team had set up this one cheerleader Armani story really well. Sort of the makeover story. We spoke about the specific type of the idea of Black beauty, of Black hair, how the coach of this very traditional femme Southern Texas cheerleading team, like they had to learn a lot about different needs of different members of their team and honoring the individual beauty of members of their team. But one particular member of this team, Armani, also has alopecia. And so for the entire season, we learn about the wig that she has custom fitted for her performance. And she made a very brave decision toward the end of the season and said, for this Might Cause My Boots game, I'm going to perform without my wig for the first time. And going back to what you were saying about how you cut specific dance sequences, for that game, I knew I want to feel like I am in her boots for that entire performance, and cut the dance in a way as if you're sort of capturing a memory of the sort of photographic memory of particular moments of that dance, feeling her breath, feeling the sound of her palms, and the overwhelming emotion that she felt doing this thing that was incredibly brave, that I let alone have no idea what it feels like to be a cheerleader, and don't know what it's like to be in that be in Armani's boots, but like we're not human if we're not trying to at least do that. Mm-hmm. So it's a scene that I'm particularly proud of, and trying to also understand like doing things editorially too that are super fun in terms of like experimental jump cutting and living on her lavalier mic, and but all in the service of story, right? It's all in the service of trying to be empathetic and trying to understand where this person is coming from and pay off something that had been set up very early on in the season by all hosts of amazing editors on our team.
Yeah, totally what Zach was saying about like I think my favorite moment is when you're watching something for the 800th time, as we do, and you forget that you're watching it for editing, and you become an audience member, and I like that's always a magical moment. And like whenever that happens, I'm like, okay, we're cooking. Like this is working. It's feeling good, and like that's always a really great that's. Whenever I have those moments on this show, on this series, like that's always like a magical, fun moment. For something specific that for season 2 that I've been lucky to work on. My favorite stuff to cut is like observational documentary verite, like plot me down in a scene and like let me just like work in this like 5-hour real life moment and kind of find the heart of that. And I love that. That's like what makes me, take on this job. But like, I think the stuff that I'm proud of that I'll talk about now is like some of these bigger montage pieces, which is totally different from that. Like, I don't actually like, it's not my favorite type of editing to do, but I love it in its own way because it's such a challenge. Like you're taking so many disparate styles. Like you are, well, for instance, and I think it's episode 6 of season 2 when we do this, it's the busy season montage where they're jumping around to like we're covering like a month of like different events that are happening in the cheerleaders' lives, and you want the audience to feel this frenetic energy of go, go, go. You know, they don't have weekends off, they don't have days off. It's practice, game, event every day of the calendar. And so like the challenge is to like really make the audience feel that crushing schedule, but also kind of like the fun, frenetic energy of jumping from a game to going to like a Mike Tyson boxing event to going to like an F1 Formula car racing event where they're doing like Thunderstruck. And so within this whole like montage, within like a 3 to 4 minute like window, you want to be able to stop down in each of these moments, play a little bit of verite, then go to some sort of slow-mo fantastical thing and kind of make it a little bit fantasy land, and then go into quick cutting montage to kind of music driving editing. So those are always fun, because how do you tell a story like this? It's almost a little bit like taking the chops of a trailer editor, or taking the chops of kind of like just kind of quick montage music video style stuff that might be different from what we do mostly in this show. But you get to like, that's what's so fun about the show, is like you have so many different little editing worlds to live in. So that's always cool to get to do those challenging pieces and like do a bunch of different editing styles in one.
Noah always kills the montages. His montages are always amazing.
That's all of us. Like we've all done these big montages, and they're fun and cool.
The 9 to 5 one from season 1, I still love.
Yeah.
Dolly Parton
That's
montage, super slick.
Anyway, I would like to thank everyone for joining us on this call, because this was really, really elucidating in terms of just your thought processes on this show. And also would like to plug America's Sweethearts, Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders. Dallas
Ooh.
Cowboys Cheerleaders. Yeah,
Watch
I know.
it.
It's
It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
yeah. It's a mouthful, but it's a fun show. June 16th. And
Yes.
for BCPC, we also have events coming up in June. We have a panel at Tribeca, and I don't know if I'm able to announce this, but we have a So You Graduated Film School, Now What virtual panel happening later on in June. So so for all of our viewers, hope you guys look forward to that too. And to you guys, thank you so much for taking the time to like talk about this show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for
This
having
was
us.
a lot of fun.
Yeah. Take it easy, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye, y'all.